Hey guys, so today I'm not wearing any foundation, a very daring move from me in front of the camera, and I'm also going to touch on what I like and dislike about each type, and today it's going to be the NFs edition. So I'm going to see how this series goes and how well received it is, whether I want to continue with the other types or not. It's going to be a little controversial, but it's all my own honest opinions, and I think that honest opinions are necessary in this day and age. So I hope you don't get triggered. And don't worry, I'm gonna criticize my own type, the INFJ, as well. So let's get into it. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the NFP types. So what I like about the INFP type is okay, number one, I think that INFP types are, like stereotypically they are like the artists of the world, and they are really good with very deep, complex emotions, and I think that's totally true. I mean, some of my favorite actors and filmmakers are INFPs. For example, I don't know if you have ever heard of this actor called Leslie Cheung. He was a Hong Kong actor, and also I think he was he was also a singer, and he just channeled his like very deep and complex emotions in every piece of work, and he's very committed to, he's very perfectionist in producing every piece of work to the best that he can. So I think INFPs, what I admire about them is really their, how great they are with the arts. Generally speaking, I think they are very in touch with the arts in general, and are um, they have this ability to get people to feel very very deeply about the subjects that they cover, and they are also very sincere people. As you know, like introverted feeling is a very like internal kind of function, so it's not like extroverted feeling where you have to, tap into the feelings of other people around you, and then, kind of try to do some kind of balancing act. Introvert feeling is all about yourself. So in that way, it can be a very authentic, sincere function, because when I'm interacting with INFP, chances are if he's uncomfortable with something, he would show it. Like, it's not like with FE where you sometimes don't really know how that person feel about you until later on. Like, usually FI is pretty authentic. If they show affection for you, it's real. So I think that's what I like about INFPs. They are really good with, their artistic endeavors, and they are really generally very sincere people, very authentic in their, in how they convey emotions, and you know where you stand with them usually. So now I'm going into what I don't like about INFPs, and this is more towards the unhealthy INFPs. So what I tend to realize is that introverted feeling, while being really authentic and creative as a function, it can also be very self-absorbed. So this is kind of, segueing into the other like FP types as well, who share the same functions. Introverted feeling tends to be very self-absorbed and self-centered, like in a sense that it really literally centers around yourself. So sometimes it's very difficult for an FI user to really know what their actions can have, the impact of their actions on other people. So they just don't realize it. So it can come across as very self-centered to other people, and also entitled. And I think with unhealthy INFPs especially, it tends to show up as a kind of like a very like whiny attitude. Like they would tend to wallow in their own emotions and disregard like the world around them. So people around an unhealthy INFP would tend to feel very burdened by their negative outlooks on the world, and just like that energy, you know. So I think that's something that INFPs can look into themselves to kind of find ways to snap out of, or find other like healthier outlets rather than continuously wallowing in their own emotions and disregarding other people and the impact that that can have on other people. Another thing is that unhealthy INFPs tend to act like an ESTJ, so they can be overly critical of everything around them. They can also have a very controlling vibe, so they can basically want everything to go their way and be, controlling over petty matters. That is kind of the ESTJ shadow taking over. So once again, self-awareness in that aspect really helps. So moving on with the ENFPs. What I like about ENFP, again, is that they are usually very authentic people. So ENFPs, they tend to be very outgoing, and they tend to be very good with social situations, which is something that I find very helpful because I need someone who is good with social situations to be around me in order to kind of, take me to a bigger group of people, and just like making me feel comfortable in a situation where there's a lot of people I don't know. ENFPs are also really good with, one-on-one. So they don't try to assimilate themselves within a group. They keep their own like individuality intact. They keep their own quirks, and because they do that for themselves, they usually respect individuality in others. They don't expect you to try. They don't try to assimilate you. Basically, like they don't try to make you a part of them. Rather, they are interested in like how you are as a person, and they are interested in kind of knowing that, rather than trying to make you, gel well with the group. So in that sense, even though they are very social people, they also recognize the value of the individual, and I think that they tend to be really good with taking care of people one-on-one. Like I think they are very unlike ENFJs that are good with speaking to a crowd. Rather than speaking to a crowd, they tend to influence people from their own actions. Like they're just very high energy. So when you are around them, you would kind of be infected by the whole like high energy and lightheartedness of them. And I think that every ENFP tend to have certain unique traits about them that they do not compromise with. And it can be, something with their appearance. It can be, the way they talk, or something personal. But it's great to see that with, a world that is very keen on assimilating people, that they are keen in preserving those aspects of themselves. So on what I don't like about ENFPs, again, this has to do with the more unhealthy versions of ENFPs. For ENFPs that are, kind of in the process of developing their weaker functions, they can, again, exhibit those functions in an unhealthy manner. So for example, ENFPs that are developing extraverted thinking can also lash out at people during an argument, because ENFPs generally are, I would say they are weaker in logic when they are still in a developing process. So sometimes if you confront them with something that is very, let's say, like very introverted thinking based, like TI based, and ENFPs do not have TI, they are very weak at TI, they would kind of feel attacked by the logic, and they would tend to overreact and use their TE, which is, a very strong and like critical function, and they can kind of use TE in a very like almost like they don't really have full control over that function, so they would use it in a careless way. So people can feel very kind of like suddenly intimidated because they, they seem to be usually so nice and lighthearted, and suddenly there's like a lashing out. And for unhealthy ENFPs, the lashing out can be a little too tough on people. It can be kind of disproportionate to their own actions. So that is something to take note of. Like, refrain from turning into a TJ that is basically like out of control when you are angry. Okay, now we have to move on to the NFJs, which is like myself included. So I will start with ENFJ and end with my own type. ENFJs, what I like about them is that, they are really powerful in social situations. So, ENFJs tend to be very popular people. They tend to be very influential, also very charismatic on kind of like a large scale level. I believe Oprah Winfrey is ENFJ. She's really good at influencing people on a very like huge group basis. Like she's able to help them in their lives. And unlike the INFJ, which is more on a one-on-one like individual basis, ENFJ is good at influencing people on a very huge scale. So for example, if someone like Oprah talks about the effects of bullying on students in school, then there's more likely for people to listen to her because she's really good at influencing crowds. And ENFJs also, again, like with the extrovert thing, they tend to be really good at, bringing people out of their shell, and they are also very good at taking care of people. So because of their very strong extroverted feeling, they tend to be very good at taking care of people's emotions, and also physical needs. Like I have experiences with ENFJ friends where they have actively taken care of me when I'm not feeling well. They show their concern in a very obvious way so that you can really sense it and feel it. And generally speaking, they are also very friendly people. They have a very strong work ethic. So that's another thing that I really admire about ENFJs, is that they have a way stronger work ethic than me, for example, and they tend to get their stuff done, and they tend to be very productive and able to do a lot of different things. So ENFJs can be very talented people in many areas. Okay, now the not so great stuff. Okay, so what I don't like about ENFJs, the unhealthy types again. So ENFJs, they do care about people, and they do want to influence the world, and they want to influence society on a large scale. But the problem is, a lot of times what I observe about some ENFJs is that in their process of wanting to improve the world, they may come across as self-righteous, and because they come across as self-righteous, it can backfire. Like their efforts to improve the world can backfire. So for example, if you are talking to an ENFJ, and ENFJs tend to have very fixed, like very set opinions on the world. Like they have a very strict, because extroverted feeling is a judging function, and that is their first function. So they tend to have like a very fixed worldview, okay? So for example, if they see someone as a bad person, or someone said something that they perceive as, xenophobic, I don't know. Like that may not actually be true, okay? That may or may not be actually be true, but because they see that person that way, based on, their own judgment of FE, then it's very likely that they would not give the person any chance of, any form of communication, like any form of proving them wrong, even if that person, has done something that is redeeming, or, that person is actually showing like things that may not fit into that view of them. I realize that ENFJs can be very set in their views, and because they they tend to judge morally, and that can put a lot of people off, especially when, you know, everyone is not perfect. Like, people generally have flaws, and when you judge someone so harshly, and sometimes the judgment is not really well deserved, then that can actually be very problematic. So, you know, sometimes they can, for example, they can block people upon seeing them as immoral after, you know, some kind of disagreement. But that may not actually be the case. It can also be the case that they just have differing opinions on certain issues. So I think the self-righteousness of an ENFJ, especially during like an argument where ENFJs mostly argue with emotions, like a lot of them do not have a very developed logical function, like TI is their inferior function. So because a lot of them do not have TI that is strong, they tend to be very emotional during arguments, and sometimes that can shut down the argument. And they can get offended very easily as a result of this like overwhelming FE that is constant in your life. So I would advise, you know, trying to develop your inferior functions so as to be able to communicate with other types with more ease, and lessen the self-righteousness. Okay, INFJ. So I'm going to be as objective as I can. INFJs, I have known, you know, a few INFJs in my life, and generally I tend to get along with female INFJs more than male INFJs. I don't know why. So what I like about INFJ, obviously, is, you know, we are very similar in certain aspects, you know, like our hobbies wise. I can definitely click very well with INFJs in terms of our hobbies, and, you know, like the books that we read, the films that we watch tend to be similar. Sometimes similar, not always, but, you know, it tends to be films that are pretty imaginative, like allow us to kind of reflect on a lot of subjects, and we tend to be very creative people as well. And INFJs are also really good listeners. I feel like with some other types, sometimes I'm always the one doing the listening most of the time. But with other INFJs, I think that it's more of a mutual thing where I listen, and then, you know, and then she listens to me. And so it's more of a balance in that sense. And so another thing about INFJs is that we are not what we seem. So I think that can be quite exciting when it comes to, you know, knowing someone. Like, you think you know them, and then they show you like some other sides of them that is interesting, that is unexpected of them. So, you know, INFJs have like different sides to us that we don't show immediately when we know someone, and I think that kind of unraveling can be very interesting, especially to, you know, other people. I think with fellow INFJ, it's kind of predicted, since, you know, there are certain sides of us that we already know. Also, I think INFJs tend to be a balanced feeler and thinker. Like, we are not like too emotional, and we are not too thinker to the point where we are completely insensitive. So I think that's a good balance. What I don't like about INFJs, so this is also to do with unhealthy types. INFJs that are unhealthy or exhibit unhealthy traits, which I think we all do at some point in our lives. INFJs tend to be very conflict avoidant. So we're not very good at conflict resolution. And, you know, when a conflict happens, I think it's like INFJs are generally not very articulate people. So we are not very good at expressing ourselves, and that can confuse people. Like, we don't say what we mean. Like, we don't say the full version of what we mean. So that can really confuse other people who are trying to see where we're coming from. So the part of us that's not so articulate, especially in a conflict or a stress situation, it kind of breaks down communication. because we are not articulate and clear, especially like when it comes to setting boundaries. We sometimes also don't really know how to voice that out in a very clear and concise and direct way. And unhealthy INFJs also tend to hold grudges. So, if someone did a small wrong to us, or, something that, or maybe it can be something serious, I think we have a hard time, letting go and forgiving that person, even though, even though both of us could have contributed to the situation, or maybe that person has more to contribute to that situation at that time. But I think that learning to let go and learning to not let things build up, just learning to be clear, on what we want and what we don't want, and learning to forgive others is something that INFJs should try to, do more of and implement it in our everyday life. So that's about it. I think the video, again, is going a little too long. So I hope that you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe for more. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.